Greetings to you all. Welcome to Chess Collab. Alfred is my name. Today, we are going to look at pawn promotion. Right, I'm going to start to define what is pawn promotion. What is it exactly? Right, pawn promotion is when a pawn reaches the 8th rank for white. That is the last row, right at the end there. That's the 8th rank for white. And also for black, since black will be moving from this side, going this other side. That means black's first rank. In other words, that's where you can see these letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, right here. Right. So let's dive into the actual. I'm going to illustrate on the chessboard so that you can quickly see and understand. Right. In this case, A pawn, which is on A2, have managed to sail through to the other end. And automatically, it becomes a queen. I'm going to explain more with regard to that. Right. Let's move on. Again, another illustration for black. Black pawn on G7 have been promoted. In other words, already been promoted again to become a queen. Right. I've got a question. Pawn promotion piece options. We've got quite a number of options. 4 options to be more specific. So that means any pawn promoted, it can become a queen. It can become a rook. Also, it can become a rook. As I've already mentioned, it can be a bishop. Also, it can be a knight. So, in other words, you choose from these 4 pieces. Right, let me add more. Replacement of the pawn occurs on the same square. In other words, let's say the pawn managed to reach the other side on probably, I'm just going to say A8. So that means just like the previous illustration, A8. So you have to replace the queen with that pawn on A8. That's all what you need to do. Right, let's move on. Cannot remain a pawn. Remember that. Right, but one of the 4, each time promotion occurs, one of these 4. Any promotion which you're going to do, once the pawn reaches the other end, reach the furthest rank, I must say, it becomes one of the 4. That's all what I'm trying to say in this case. All right, let's move on. Usually a queen. Why? I'll give you some few seconds to think about it. Well, if you've already said, oh, because it's one of the most powerful chess pieces on the chessboard, just like what I've mentioned previously. You got it right. Now let's move on. You can have more than one queen or multiple of any pieces. It all depends. Remember that. So in other words, for a queen, I'm going to tell you more. 9 of them. You can have 9, including the one which you already had before during the actual beginning of the game. So isn't it a great idea? So in chess, be strategic all the time and think about the rules. Right, in this case, you're going to have another queen, D8. Right, there we go. Black can also have a queen, C1. And also, remember, not limited to pieces that have already been captured. In this case, you're talking in terms of the knight. We have got 2 black knights here, as you can see. The knight on B8 and the knight on G8. So as you can see, we've got 2 knights there. So now, pawn F is now let's just assume that this pawn on H7 have moved all the way without being captured, all the way to the first rank there for black. H1, then we can decide. We can become a knight. This is what I'm talking about, not limited to the pieces that have already been captured. Even the same piece which is still on the chessboard can be promoted. Remember, we're talking about the 4 pieces which I've already indicated to you. All right, so let's move on. Notating pawn promotion. So this is more or less associated with the algebraic notation, which at some stage, as time goes on, we might touch base on that. But now it's better to practice more. Right, then notating can always come into play as you progress, and obviously as you notate, as you play, more notating, but notating at a later stage. Right, let's see what's going to happen. Right, the queen, which was within the A file, you have to write down the file first, then the capital letter for the piece, which is Q, capital letter Q. If you still remember very well, last time I touched on this, just a bit of it. It was more or less like an introductory. Naming of the pieces, notation, the symbols, if you remember very well. Right, let's see now. So in this case, as I've already indicated, A for the file, then Q for the queen, then 8 where it is. So it is on A8, then we also include the symbol for the specific piece, which is Q for the queen. Then we'll move on again. As you can see already, on C, there we go. Right, C1, that's where C, Q for the queen, then 1, the actual rank in this case. Right, then we'll move on again. We have, it's too fast there, D. Let's look on D. That's where we are. Queen 8, on 8, the 8th rank. Right, down there. G, queen 1. It's on G, it's for black. Queen have just been promoted from this side. Coming this side, queen. Then obviously, remember, when you are doing it practically, you won't see this pawn. Right, except only if you've got a double pawn in 1-5. No problem. Right, let's move on. Right, in this case, right, let me do this. Bit. H. N for knight. Remember last time? We don't use the K. We use the N for knight. Just to remember that. Right. Let's move on now. Remember in chess, each move is associated with a rule. If you remember this, then it should be fine. Right. That's all I wanted to cover. I mean, as far as pawn promotion is concerned, please remember to subscribe and also share, which is quite great indeed. Also remember to do the quiz to check your progress. And lastly but not least, if you have got any questions, please do not hesitate to make use of the comment section. I will check every now and then, even days to come, weeks to come, years to come as well. I hope you're going to enjoy the 15 lessons so far, which I have already executed. Enjoy, and thank you so much for joining.